TikTok is getting banned, and are foreign governments using social media platforms as psychological warfare? Welcome to the Coffee Break podcast on This Professional Life, where we sit down with our coffees and chat about our perspectives on the challenges around business and the world at large. Welcome to Coffee Talk, and today we're going to chat about TikTok this week. Eric, news from U.S. government and other governments. Not only are they banning TikTok on government devices, but now the talk is, are they going to be banning TikTok just period in like the US? And if they pass it, does this set precedent? So I want to talk about a few things, including potential psychological warfare of foreign governments using social media platforms. And we got some interesting perspectives on that. So let's maybe talk a bit about the ban first and what it means. A few months ago, or I guess last year, there was already decisions made by governments to ban TikTok on government devices. What are your thoughts on that, Eric?
I think it makes sense from a security perspective because TikTok is a Chinese-based company, and all companies that are based in China have to follow whatever Chinese government says, right? So it makes sense that there could be a backdoor, that there could, for the data, there could be access to the data. And there's a lot of data that's collected, right? So for other countries to have their government officials and on TikTok, I guess it makes sense from a security angle, right? But haven't we been through this many times already with different apps?
Well, so here's my thing. Okay, I'm not doubting that government entities would have the capability to add a backdoor into a piece of software. We saw that here in Canada with the debate about using Huawei equipment for our telecom industry, and that somehow there could be a way for the Chinese government to be able to put in backdoor software within the hardware. Mm-hmm. But I challenge that a little bit too, because could not our IT people, as they're inside, is there a way to detect these pieces of software, or is it that sophisticated that you can hide it and that no one can catch it?
I don't know, but I think at the end of the day, if the government in China says, "Hey, I want every single person's age and email address and whatever they have," obviously you have to sign up for TikTok and provide some information, and the app itself collects other information, right? I don't think you can resist. I mean, here's conspiracy theory stuff, I guess, but when's the last time you heard from Jack Ma?
That's a whole other issue, isn't it?
That's what I'm sort of saying. There's all these celebrities in China and other kind of CEOs. They're very quiet right now. So from my outside looking at the situation, I think they have a very strong influence. Frankly, we can talk crap about anything we want here in Canada, but the government is quite powerful, right? So
does this not, and this is one thing, and we chatted about this the other day, but like, is it almost like now, I guess we know how governments like China and Russia feel when their citizens are on things like Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, because they could make the same argument. Oh, YouTube, you have to disclose information about my Chinese citizens to the U.S. government if they ask. Isn't that the case?
That is the case. That's the struggle. I mean, like if you look at Apple operating in China, I don't know how they've walked that tightrope for so long. Yeah. Because even the U.S. has demanded that Apple create a backdoor just for the U.S. government. So, and I'm not completely up to date on my news on that side of things, but I believe there is some compromises that Apple has made for China in that market, but not as not in their general operations. But ultimately, they're based in the U.S., right? Yeah. And they're not operating a social media site, right? Yeah. So I think banning TikTok as an idea makes sense, but the fallout and it's always in the nuances where things get confusing. So if you have someone that is going to remove TikTok from their work device, does that mean that they can't just have a second phone as a personal device and just go on TikTok and that side? And are there going to be like pat downs and searches?
So and that's one of the things that I was thinking about too, is like, sure, you ban it on their work device and they're working for the government, but to your point, to what extent is the backdoor program, if it is capturing data?
Right.
Because we all know, like with Facebook, you and I are talking about dog food, and then all of a sudden I'm seeing dog food ads on Facebook, and I haven't searched anywhere on my phone for dog food. Yeah. And so there are claims that, Facebook is tapping the microphone.
It could be anything small. Like I've looked up Typeform lately.
Yep.
As a business solution.
Yep.
And now it's all over the place, right? And maybe it's just that one cookie or whatever that I downloaded when I was looking at their website. But if you use TikTok to share family, I don't know. I'm not sure. Like, people can use things whichever way they want. You don't have to be influencer and all that.
Yep.
That motivation. Yep. You can just be sharing your home cooking recipes, right? But does that on TikTok, does that mean that you're not allowed to do that anymore as a federal employee? And does that mean then, if you do that, you're going to get fired? And is there someone that's going to audit all this information? I don't know. It's so easy to go offside, I guess you can say.
Yep.
And it's so hard to audit and enforce all this, right? And there's also the other argument too, like you were making that, is this how, I don't know, the East, like, the China has felt with North American media? Because when I look at how crazy BTS, the North American K-pop group, Japanese anime, Japanese culture.
The South Korean K-pop group.
Sorry. Oh my God. Sorry about that. Cultural products are huge.
Right.
Like, so big. Japan's cultural exports are huge. Anime,
growing up, we had the anime, Dragon Ball Z,
toys, cartoons,
all those things that we were watching.
Yeah, and those are hugely profitable because those are basic intellectual property, right?
Right.
You're never going to run out of. You can run out of labor per se, but if you draw more episodes, now you have more of that product. You're not limited to selling hard goods or anything like that. But at the same time, the influence is huge. Tourism is huge. Curiosity about the culture is huge, right? And I bring up BTS for South Korea because to me, it was Psy that kicked things off with Gangnam Style. And then suddenly, to me, like South Korean food, I remember the Korean hot dogs and whatever else, like all those things came into this market.
Yeah.
And I think if you looked at how much that has influenced our culture, our pop culture, our shows, Squid Game, for example, it totally has been going the other way for the most part, right?
Well, and the other thing too is, and this is through my contacts who have had discussions with executives at certain of these Chinese companies, the Chinese government takes a lot of pride in these, call it ventures that originate from China. Because you got to remember, for the longest time, a lot of the innovation and creativity, and it still does, mainly come from US or the West. And so some of these creations like Huawei and TikTok, which is owned by ByteDance, which is the parent company, which is in China, there's a bit of national pride, right? That they want this to go on a global stage. But unfortunately, you can't disconnect that with the communist government regime and some of their policies when it comes to foreign entities. So one thing I just want to go through with people who don't understand the current law or the current policy that's being passed in Congress is based on something called the Berman Act. For many years, and this stemmed from the Cold War. And so at one point, there was a policy written in place that the passing of ideas, because during the Cold War, there was like almost a shutdown of nothing could get to the Russia side, and nothing could be leaked to the US. And so they actually passed this act that provided a bit of a leeway for certain types of information, because you can't gatekeep everything.
Right.
And so during the Trump administration, when they tried to stop and ban TikTok, TikTok successfully fought it in court using, I believe it's called the Berman Act. And what it said is, hey, this covers digital communication as well. So you can't cut us off. And so that's why there was a deal to have TikTok spin off into a US entity. And I think Oracle and Walmart were the two corporate entities that were supposed to take it over. Then Trump did not win re-election. Biden came in. So now we've got the Biden administration re-looking at how this looks. And that's why this week they've now almost a bit of a bipartisan bill to pass that would specifically ban things like TikTok. The problem with that is at least some of the politicians are arguing that it's a massive overreach because it may wrap up a lot of entities, let's say in the US,
right,
that gets caught up in this.
And it could go both ways. They can go
absolutely.
So you can go have American or North American companies that, or any company that's not doing anything wrong, just get kicked out of markets or just have a lot of headwinds, and now you create a lot of different kind of problems. I guess as a normal person, I don't really have to think about national security, but it makes sense from that perspective that you're saying, because now that this stuff is worth a lot of money and it has a lot of influence. It seems like it's really hard to get this thing back into the what do they say? The genie back into
the bottle,
the lamp,
the genie in the bottle.
I guess that's true too.
Yeah.
But anyways,
but here's the thing though. Let's not forget the Chinese government censors a lot of the US platforms anyways. I don't think you can access Facebook in China, or at least I know when I lived in China, certain topics were censored if you were to search it through YouTube. So it's not like they use now. I mean, the arguments are being made by the companies, out of their interest. So currently it's the TikTok lawyers that are arguing that, they can't do this. So now the Chinese government, I mean, they censor a lot of Western things anyway. So it's not like it's not happening the other way.
So I can see how from a US and Canadian perspective, if the government started doing similar kind of tit for tat, that would be an overreach, right? Like you can't, like didn't Canada do that where they were saying media companies had to start showing more Canadian content, right?
Yes.
So, and there was some kind of concern about that too, because if you're a YouTuber and you're trying to use it as your business platform, then you may not be shown to as many American audience,
which is a much bigger audience,
whatever.
So the other thing too, and interesting you bring up Canada and US. We also had that too with a lot of like accounting professional services firms, where there was some thoughts that you couldn't house client data on US servers because of the Patriot Act would allow the US government to access and request that data. So it's interesting because the US has policies in place like the Patriot Act that you would argue is similar to, what they're complaining about with China, about having access to information from these companies. US is doing it the same. I mean, ideologically, there's some, I'm US and we're Western society, we're democracy. So it's like,
so there's a question of like, I have the ability to do so, but if I choose to do so, there's a different moral or kind of like justification that we're looking at here, obviously. With this current situation, though, I just think it comes down to a reflection of how much complexity there is in our society now. There is all this technology that we never had before, and now it's so easy to use, and it has become a business. It has become like when things make money. I remember as a kid, okay, I would ask my mom, "Can I go do this? No. Can I do that? No. Can I go play this? No." But on the flip side, I can imagine back in the day now, if YouTube existed and I said, "Can I do this? Because I make $10,000 a month off my YouTube channel doing this stuff," I don't think she would say no. Money seems to justify things like activities. right? And whether that's good or bad, that's a different conversation. But now that TikTok, so many people have their careers based on that. Even politicians are using it to promote themselves. I mean, it's not a bad thing. You can be bringing up good conversations and awareness through TikTok. It's not like it's just all random kind of, pranks and things like that. We've sort of matured past that in many ways, but now it's a business. So now that it's a business, in the accounting profession, there's just so many people that want to make things. Well, complexity comes with money. That's what I'm trying to say. So now that TikTok makes money, YouTube makes money, I'm collecting money from as a YouTuber or TikToker.
Yep.
Yeah.
TikToker.
You could be making money and collecting revenues from anywhere in the world, right? How does that work? Does that mean there's a net money out from one country and the net money into another country back to like how Pokemon and Nintendo, like how the Japanese economy really benefited from selling their cultural kind of IP to the rest of the world, right? Even to this day. And that is a struggle of influence, but that's big business. So I don't know where this complication goes away.
Yep.
But a simple ban on things, it seems like it's very blunt as an instrument, and it does not really work too well unless there's more explanation and nuances.
Yeah. So one thing I do, so I want to segue into a little bit about what I said at the beginning of the intro about the psychological warfare. So you just talked about business and how it's used for business, but let's take the angle of, if you go back to the Cold War, and yes, there were nuclear weapons, like military was one, but it was, if you look back at the roots of it, it was about ideological warfare. It was the East versus West, communism versus, Western democracy. And so rather than go full on military war, as, some countries may see as expensive, a lot of your citizens will die. The question is, are these foreign governments, and it doesn't matter if you're looking at US or China, are they utilizing these platforms as psychological warfare to what the word I'm looking for is not mow down, but like to really deteriorate a society to a point where they can't defend themselves on a psychological side. So, and let me give you an example here. You had mentioned an article or an instance where they were interviewing like a kid in China, and their aspirations are to become like an astronaut or some PhD professor to cure cancer or whatever it is. But more and more kids in Western countries are aspiring to be influencers on TikTok, on YouTube. And so you've got this like almost brain drain through these apps where instead of aspiring to be like innovators as we have always led in the world, not saying influencers aren't innovators on TikTok, but I just feel like, yeah, you've got one country now aspiring to go to the moon, to be scientists, to be this. And then we've got us in the Western world. It's like, oh no, but I want to be a YouTube star. So not to demean influencers, but if you're trying to deteriorate a society to the point where they can't think, and where this also leads to is this attention span too, right? So your society no longer you're like a 3-second attention span now. If you don't capture attention within 3 seconds, people are off learning about things, reading about things, watching about things. So from a psychological point, what are your thoughts about this being a tool now for war?
I don't doubt that anything could be a tool for war. Anything. I mean, back in the day, again, just studying it from history, right? Our textbooks and whatnot. I mean, textbooks were a tool for war. Pamphlets, posters were even, right? Those were our tools for war. This is interesting to me because when you mentioned it was an ideological kind of grounds for war, I just keep imagining how it was the government that led the charge. You get people involved in it, and you can control the narrative to one story. West is bad, East is good, whatever it is, right? Communism is bad or good, and then you rally around that.
And I guess that's my point too, is like, I don't think that the foreign governments need to really build a backdoor to gather data. I honestly feel if they were using something to fight this war,
right,
psychological, ideological war, they don't need backdoor. The fact that they have these platforms that have conditioned our society now to be that 3-second attention society, that in itself is a detriment to the Western society. So I almost feel like this worry about backdoor grabbing your data, what to me is more worrisome is like what we're creating in our new generation of kids who are getting used to, hey, give me the information in 3 seconds or I'm not going to learn about it.
Yeah, so to talk about the attention span part, I think it is true. You can get conditioned to like it's like junk food, right? Fast food, right? Like I see a lot of recipes, for example, as a busy family for 15-minute dinner, 30-minute dinners. But when you start getting into it, like it's very difficult to make a dinner from scratch to eating in 30 minutes. It is hard unless you have all the skills and you've done some prep and everything. So when we're looking at the current state of things, yeah, there is literally an unlimited amount of videos you can watch. You can scroll on forever. I don't know how long, how much time you've spent before, but I can say confidently an hour or two or could easily go by, but just scrolling and scrolling and scrolling. And
so they have stats on this.
Right.
50%, I think, of kids on TikTok, I believe, spend a couple hours on TikTok.
Right.
But they also came out with a stat that out of, so in that age group, I think 16% of those kids have said they've spent over 10 hours.
So
consecutively on TikTok.
So here's the thing. I'm not arguing the long-term benefits or detriments to what that interaction does. But the reality is that we all have 24 hours. And if you're using 2 hours a day out of your arguably 16 hours of wake time, right? Then in a week, that's assuming that you do the same even on the weekends with no school or no work, right? Then that's 14 hours a week of scrolling.
Yeah.
I mean, can it be used more productively? Absolutely. Would we do otherwise? I don't know. That's because I mean, it's not like we were doing like volunteer farming before this, and then this social media app came and destroyed that effort. We were entertaining ourselves in other ways anyway.
Yep.
So I'm not sure if there's really an argument that says there is this damage or not. My question is like, am I really invested on the platform? Am I invested on the people I watch? I don't know. I don't think it's really that organized. But I do think that we have to think much harder. Like banning TikTok on federal phones? Sure. But should it be forever? Should it be in an election year? Should it be the 6 months up to an election and then 6 months after?
So last thing I want to talk about for our coffee break today is
running out of coffee.
is because we are on TikTok as well. We're building up our TikTok channel for our business development consulting side of things, and TikTok is part of some strategies that we work on for clients. But the question is, so if it does get banned, what happens to everybody who's starting to build a livelihood on TikTok? Because there are a lot of influencers that are making millions as influencers on TikTok. So one thing I will address is that companies like TikTok, they do obviously have plans that if they do get banned, they'll spin it off, because TikTok itself has a huge employee base in the US running the US operation. So they would spin it off, make it a US company. So from that perspective, I don't think influencers or people who are trying to build their presence on TikTok necessarily have to worry that their livelihood is going to be taken away. Are there some difficulties in transition? There might be. But from that standpoint, I will say they probably don't have to worry too much. But at the same time, it does address a fact about relying. Businesses and influencers relying on these third-party platforms to build their livelihood.
It's going to change no matter what. Okay. We see what has happened with Twitter. You pay, you get a blue check mark. We've seen recently what Mark Zuckerberg has said about Instagram and Facebook. You pay,
you get verification.
Exactly. Back to the point that this has become a business. I remember, again, dating myself, whatever. I'm old. But the thing is, I'm also grateful that we have seen these things come from nothing.
Yeah.
I remember the land grab at first when Facebook first came on, and we were just friending everybody again. Throughout this whole time, Facebook was fine with just saying, great, as long as you let us use your data, which you have no choice anyways, we're going to sell ads, and this is the business model. All good, right? Well, now it's like real big business. I don't see how this is going to ever stay the same again, because Twitter has said, pay us, and they got away with it. I don't see a collapse in Twitter that everyone's predicting. There isn't. People are still on this platform. And at the same time, I think it's going to be the same for Facebook. Businesses are going to find a way to justify that, okay, you know what? If it's $50 a month or whatever it is for Facebook, I need to do this because it makes business sense for me. Does it make sense for the average person? Maybe not, right? But we see these pay to win, these barriers to entries that are coming up to basically reflect what the real value of these platforms are and what the real purpose of these platforms are. And that being said, it's probably not in the worst interest for the company, the social media company, for people to be reliant on them to make a living.
Yeah.
That's probably great. I don't know. I'm not going to say they're really insidious about it, but in a way, they are. The more you rely on their platforms, the more it's going to stay on. Like, in my mind, I've always been wondering, when is YouTube going to make you take a mandatory course, get a YouTube license of some sort, and pay them to use their platform?
Pay to play.
Exactly. So we're back to this situation where if TikTok was to say, look, it's $5 a month to be on TikTok.
Surprisingly, that would weed out some people.
It would weed out some, but at the same time, would it collapse the platform? I don't know. But fascinating stuff. I think in terms of business-wise, that's where it gets really complicated.
All right. Well, that's Coffee Break for today about TikTok and social media. We're going to have to wait and see what the U.S. Congress passes over the next couple of weeks, because that's going to have a lot of effect on countries like Canada. The EU normally follow suit with the U.S. So, make sure to hit that subscribe button, the like button on whatever platform you're listening to our podcast and watching our show. And we will catch you next time on Coffee Break.